Hello world, welcome to a new video of Build Dev Tours channel. I really hope that this is the last video about the general and national strike of Ecuador in June 2022 that I make. Not only because the protest obviously ended and because gasoline is now cheaper, but also because I hope that this is really over and that we have not simply taken a break of 90 days to continue the strikes in September. And I will let you know in this video why that is a real risk. If it is your first time in this channel, Build Dev Tours is a licensed tour operator located in Ecuador, whose main goal is to help in the development of Ecuador through tourism, of course, always taking into account sustainability of the territories and its cultures. I am Luis Velasquez Pazmiño, and I am not your average tour guide in Ecuador for tourism and relocation. If you're planning to come to Ecuador, whether for tourism or for relocation, you may send me an email to info@builddevtours.com with your inquiries, and I will be glad to assist you. In this channel, I want to show you Ecuador, show you the beauties of Ecuador, the culture, the landscapes, and also aspects of daily life in Ecuador. And of course, promote Ecuador worldwide. I'm recording this video shortly after the end of a national strike that lasted for 18 days between the 13th and the 30th of June 2022. And in this video, I will explain the causes of the strike, not the list of 10 demands that were made to the government during the strikes, but the causes for these demands. And I will also let you know the reason why I founded a tour operator. Now, about the general strike. The reason why the protests started were set in a list of 10 demands delivered to the national government by the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAIE, along with other associations of indigenous nationalities and farmers in the country. I made another video explaining in detail these 10 demands. So if you haven't watched it yet and you're interested in these 10 demands, you may go check that video out once you have finished watching this video. I will leave the link in the description. During 18 days, most of the country was paralyzed. Most of the important roads in the country were blocked by protesters, so people couldn't move between cities. Thus, merchandise, goods, food couldn't also be moved between cities. Also, other essential elements like gasoline, propane couldn't reach their destinations. Even access to some oil wells in the Amazon region were blocked by protesters, which reduced the oil production in about 50% during these days. All of this, as you can imagine, produced a lot of financial loss, around $1,000 million, which for a country of 18 million inhabitants, which is Ecuador's population, is a lot. Some of these demands were met, others were partially met, and some others are still under negotiation during the next 90 days. The strike ended on June 30, with pricing of diesel at 1.75 and gasoline of 85 octanes at $2.40. And the government pledged to work on focalized subsidies for certain areas that need it the most, like farming areas. There will not be an extension of mining areas and oil production areas, which are mainly in indigenous special protected areas, in natural reserves, and this was one of the main demands of indigenous peoples to the government. A state of emergency in the national health system was declared by the national government, something that had been denied during many months because the government said that the situation was complicated but not that bad for declaring emergency. Something that people who know how the system is working now and how it worked about 6 years ago can tell that the situation is pretty bad, and the government in the end had to declare the emergency after many months of saying that it was not necessary. The government pledged to comply with the right of due information and due referendums in indigenous areas prior to the concession of projects that might affect their environment, something that so far has not been really complied with. As I mentioned, an agreement in some of these 10 demands has not been reached yet, like in subsidies for agriculture and price controls. The leaders of the different organizations said that if the agreements that have been reached are not complied with by the government, and if there is not an agreement reached in the other things within 90 days, we will have the protests again, we will have the roadblocks again. So the strike ended. But did it really end for good? The government and these social organizations have to work really hard during the next 90 days to make viability plans for these demands to be met, and also for making a better country naturally. Otherwise, unfortunately, I will have to report strikes again in September. But hopefully, I won't have to do that and we can work on a better country. Many of you have posed interesting questions and have left very good comments about the situation. Thank you very much for commenting. Remember, you are always invited to do so. I have been reading all of the comments and questions and taking into account all of them for preparing videos like this one and future videos that will come. Soon, a video of questions and answers. So please feel free to leave your comments and questions as I read all of them. I saw that many of you out of Ecuador and even foreigners living in Ecuador were surprised about how groups of indigenous peoples could block an entire road without the government being able to do something about it. And yes, it is surprising, but there is some history behind this. The CONAIE, Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, was founded in 1986. And since then, they have organized and led several strikes in Ecuador, three of them which have reached the overthrow of presidents. Imagine, the Organization of Indigenous People have managed to overthrow three presidents in the last 25 years. In those cases, the army joined the indigenous people in the end. That was after the president ordered strong repression against the protesters, but also because the presidents had acted pretty bad at that moment. I think that this time Lasso played that part strategically, because if he would have acted with all of the capacity of repression of the state, the army in the end might have turned against him to lead the people to peace again. But why? If the protesters were blocking roads, harming the economy, and violating rights of most people in the country, wouldn't people have supported Lasso's decision to take full strong action against the protesters? And well, here is the point why I decided to make this video. Protests were justified by a high percentage of Ecuadorian population, around 50%. 64.2% of people didn't support the way in which protests were being held. Roadblocks, attack to the media, police, and even to farmers or people who owned businesses and wanted to keep working. But that doesn't mean that they did not agree with the protests. And of course, now you have social media, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Many things were being made viral. There are several issues in Ecuador, and I am going to briefly mention them and the why of BuildEv Tours, why I start this business in tourism. First, Ecuador is a multi-ethnic and multicultural country. It is very easy to change between landscapes and cultures in 1 hour by road. And this is something that happened since the Spanish conquest because indigenous have always been relegated. In the cities, many people don't know about what the problems and the conditions of life in the rural area are and what the problems of people there are. And there are even people that say that people in these rural areas are poor just because they want, because they're lazy, which expresses lack of knowledge about the situation there. They don't know about living in this area, the health conditions, the access to education, and of course, many other things. For example, this is news that I would say that most people in Ecuador don't know because it doesn't become as viral as Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's trial. 27.7% of Ecuadorian people live with less than $2.85 of the United States of America a day. This is according to statistics of December 2021. That means that almost a third of population in Ecuador is under the poverty threshold. And that is Ecuadorian poverty threshold, which is maybe overestimated. Remember the number, 2.85 United States dollars a day. Imagine yourselves having to live with less than 2.85 a day without chances of employment. And suddenly inflation starts rising by a lot. Then populist leaders come and tell you that the government is to blame. Wouldn't you be angry at the level of wanting to overthrow the president or protesting in a strong way so that your voice is heard? This is the situation for about 1/3 of the population who don't see any improvements in their situation. Two, see a president with lack of empathy because he has been terrible at addressing real issues. And three, lack of education about themes like macroeconomics or global affairs. They don't know what the Federal Reserve is and how that affects us by using the United States dollar, or how a situation in Russia affects us if we are so far from them. But the main issue is the lack of empathy of people who are not in that third of the population and say that these people are lazy, are idiots, are ignorance, and terrorists, when they don't really know what the situation in their territories are and what they are lacking. Yes, there are populist leaders who take advantage of the situation and with their statements and calls incite terrorism. But it is a total mistake to call all of the protesters, the whole of a group, terrorists because of very few people, especially when you see the numbers, the data, and you see what these people are suffering. Remember, one thing is the indigenous leaders, and something different is the indigenous people. You can read another piece of news like this one here. 80% of children from the rural area who were taken in the Central University of Ecuador during the protests suffer undernutrition. This happens due to many causes, like lack of education, because in this country we have plenty of food and even superfood like quinoa, which grows in the Andes. But it all starts with state abandonment, negligence of the state, because education in these areas is the state's responsibility, and they have been very abandoned. So this is all breeding ground for crisis and populism to arise. Also, the current government has been very strict about fiscal policy, but social policies have been left aside, which, with this current situation and with so much poverty in a country like Ecuador, is almost a crime. I founded Vildev Tours, my tour operator, because as much as I love learning about cultures, about the world, I love showing cultures to people, and I would like to help people of the world to get to know these cultures of their planet. I think that if we don't understand each other, we're simply doomed to failure. We all live on this single planet, the only one on which we can live, at least so far. And if we don't realize it, so I am in Ecuador, and I try to learn something new every day about the country, about this multicultural and multi-ethnic country, because I think I can help a little bit in making people of this country to get closer, to acknowledge each other. Because if we keep increasing the division, this will explode in the worst way, because populist leaders will take advantage of the situation. What I want at this moment is that people of Ecuador know Ecuador and its people, so that we can all work together in making a better country in the best possible way, creating income opportunities for all of us here, because we have many possibilities for that, especially in the natural aspect. But for doing it in a sustainable way, we have to understand first how and why. Also, I want to show Ecuador to the world, because I think that there are people out there with the same goals and who could help here in this small part of the planet, even by simply visiting the country and taking $1 extra to a person at a local market, which multiplied by many people can make a difference. Of course, at the same time, I need to develop a source of livelihood while I work on this, and I found in tourism an opportunity to reach both goals. If we can make Ecuador reach its full potential as one of the 17 megadiverse countries of this planet, and actually the smallest one, we can be an example to the whole planet of how real development can be achieved. That would be all for this video, but not for the channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And of course, I thank you a lot for being part of this project. Also, I invite you to hit the like button and share this channel with other people that you think might be interested in knowing about culture of Ecuador, nature of Ecuador, and daily life aspects of Ecuador. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, please remember that you are free to leave them in the comment section, as I read all of them and I take into account all of them for preparing videos. Soon, a video of questions and answers. And also remember, if you have inquiries about coming to Ecuador, whether for tourism or for relocation, you may send an email to info@vildevtours.com. I will leave you some links in the description so that you read about all of this, what I have said, so that you may read about all of this that I mentioned in this video in detail, with data, with numbers. But information will be in Spanish, so you might need to use a translator like DeepL. Thank you again for watching this video entirely and for being part of this channel. See you in an upcoming video about traditions of Ecuador. Goodbye.